Okay, so now we get into the meat of the course. This is where you guys are going to do some activities, actually learn some stuff, budget, savings, all kinds of things that I get asked a lot about. So first off, hopefully you finished the quiz. That was just before this video. So the quiz is really important because it gives you some baseline terminology for some of the things that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to use some words now that you may or may not have heard of, like conveyancer, settlement, contract of sale, expression of interest, genuine savings. A lot of those terms I've actually done little videos for, and they're already up on my Instagram. So if you'd like to go and watch them and get a little bit more info, they're there on the Instagram. But otherwise, the quiz answers have also been provided for you. So I really encourage you to read all of those, because the more you understand the terminology, the more confident you're going to be when people are talking about certain things, and you're going to be like, I know what genuine savings is. So it's different from savings, which we'll go through as well in a second. So one of the questions I get a lot is, how much money do I need to buy a house? Well, that varies so much that I can't actually answer that question without taking into account some variables. But I can tell you how much, or how you work out how much you need to buy a house. So the first thing you need to do is work out how much that house is likely to cost. So if we were to buy a house and it was going to cost, say in our example, $500,000, ideally the bank will only want to lend you 80% of the value. So they're only going to want to give you about $400,000, and that's because that's 80% of the purchase price. So that's the loan to value ratio. Now, most people don't have 20% deposit saved, which is obviously in this example $100,000. And so the government gives assistance to first home buyers so they can actually get into the market with less than 20% deposit. So the Home Guarantee Scheme, which we'll talk about in a second, they actually allow us to use that for first home buyers. First home buyers can actually get in with 5% deposit, which means 95% loan, or loan to value ratio. So this loan is going to be 95% of the value. So that's going to be $475,000 loan and $25,000 deposit. So in this situation, we're able to buy a house worth $500,000 as a first home buyer using the Home Guarantee Scheme. If you're eligible, you can put $25,000 in as your deposit, which is 5% of the purchase price. And if you can afford the loan, based on the servicing that will run, the bank will give you 95% of that, which is $475,000. Now, there are some other things that you need to keep in mind. So not just saving the deposit, you also need to put some money aside for the fees and charges. So we'll go through all these in detail when we catch up, but there are things like conveyancing. So the conveyancer is your property lawyer. They're going to handle the transaction for you. Make sure that once you put the contract on the property, it goes through all the processes it needs to actually settle, which is the day that you own it. So I usually factor in about $1,500 for that, but it depends on how much the conveyancer charges you. Also, there's going to be some fees from the government, depending on the state that you're in. So stamp duty is a fee that we have to pay in Australia. Each state government charges different amounts, but most of the time they give concessions to first home buyers if they're buying under a certain price point. So as an example, in Queensland, if you were a first home buyer and you were buying a property for $500,000, and you qualify, then you would get no stamp duty payable. But if it goes over $500,000 at the moment, at the time we're recording this, then there's going to be some stamp duty. So it's important to run the stamp duty calculator that is online, and it's on this website as well, and you can check out how much the stamp duty is likely to be. We'll also do that together when we meet. So there's also some fees for insurance. If you're buying a house, you're going to need to get insurance on that property, and maybe building and pest as well. So if you want to do an inspection to make sure that the house you're buying is not going to fall down, that it doesn't have white ants in it, that the extension's been council approved and the deck's built properly, you might want to pay a building and pest inspector to do that for you. So I usually factor in about $2,500 for those things, but this is just buffer money. Like, we'll work that out a bit later on. So you can kind of keep, an idea of what you need, and stamp duty, you'll work that out on your own calculator. So that's kind of a rundown on how much you can work it out. Now, it's going to vary a lot from property to property, and as I said, we'll do it together as well. So now we're getting into some activities around budgeting, savings, getting your credit report in line, doing some market research, and the home guarantee scheme. So most of these are actually things that you're going to need to do yourself. There's activities for each one that are going to be available online. But essentially, just to give you a rundown on what they're all for, budgeting is obviously really important because we want to make sure we're living within our means. Essentially, we just want to make sure that all of our expenses plus our savings is going to be less than or equal to, at worst, what we're earning. And that's as a household. So online, there's a budgeting tool that I've put in the links, but you can use any budgeting tool that you want and start living within the budget. So if you want to spend money on fun and go out, absolutely you should do that. This should not be the only thing that you're spending your money on is saving for a house. But we want to make sure we factor that in so you don't go out and spend lots of money and then have nothing left to actually put towards the savings for your house if that's a goal for you. So do the budgeting activity, see how it comes out. Again, if you have questions, you can call me along the way, but we need to factor in our savings. So obviously we need money to put towards buying a house and we want to put that money away consistently and we want to be able to show a lender genuine savings. So genuine savings is a little bit different from savings. So savings is just money in a bank account that you own. Genuine savings, technically the definition with the banks is funds held or accumulated in a bank account in your name for at least 90 days. So what the banks want to see is that you can actually put money away consistently for the last 3 months at least and not use it. Like if something happens and you need it, then that's going to look like you can't live without it. We're trying to mimic repayments and show the banks that we're really good at budgeting and that we're not going to need that money back.